All right. Well, we're back on the Hope Filled Fiction blog this week, and I have a new guest here to introduce to you. This is Dylan West. Hi, Dylan.
Hi, how are you, Dina?
Good, good. Glad to have you here. So, Dylan is from my neck of the woods, and we met at a local writers group. And so I'm happy to have him on today. And before we get going into the questions about your writing and your books, I want you to just take a minute to introduce yourself, if you would. Let us know a little bit about you and your family, anything you want us to know about Dylan West.
Okay. Well, if you take a language nerd and a science geek and you mush that together with a programmer, then you get a weird trinity that looks something like this.
I love that. So we're going to jump in and talking a little bit about your writing. I'd love to know how you started writing and when, like how long ago did this happen for you?
Well, the first time I wrote was when a teacher held me at GPA point. You're
Mm.
going to write this article or you get an F. And
Ah,
I hated it, right? And I was told by my first grade teacher, you're going to read this. And that was okay until I had to start reading books that I found were boring. So I started off the first 13 years of my life hating reading and writing.
wow.
If you had told me I was going to be an author back then, I would have laughed.
Mm,
I would have thought that sounds boring. That sounds way too hard.
mm,
Never. If
wow.
you had told me how to be a computer programmer too, I would have laughed at you for that too. So basically, everything I thought when I knew nothing. I knew
Yeah.
nothing when I was a kid. But one book changed that for me. I actually have it on my bookshelf. I probably should have got it from the shelf. It's called Salamandastron by Brian Jacques. I don't know if you're familiar with the Redwall series. It's a bunch of
Yeah.
woodland creatures. The peaceful mice are getting raided by the vicious voles and rats. One of those, right?
Okay.
Cute badger on the cover. I went to a Scholastic book fair when I was 13. I had my own money and I had saved it by sweeping the leaves off of my next door granny's porch. Right. So here I am loaded with like $10, in my pocket. And I go and I'm looking around and I'm like, all right, I think maybe I'll give this reading thing a try again, with a book that I get to choose because the
Right.
teacher's
Right.
always telling me, you're going to read this book. So I found this cute book with a badger, and I was like, hey, let me try this. And I remember standing at the table right in front of the lady and just thumbing through and reading, and I went, I took it home, and after reading that book, it turned me into a writer and a reader overnight. And by writer, I mean novelist. At the age of 13, I wrote my first novel. I took a stack of 400 loose leaf notebook paper pages, college ruled too, and a number two pencil. And I shackled myself to my desk in my tiny bedroom in Georgia, and I just filled every page until all 400 pages were done. Why 400 pages? Because that's how long his books were. And all the cute little, moles and badgers and all those little icons for the chapter headings. It had the number of the chapter, then it had a square with some visual from the scene. I did that in my book too. It was
Wow.
basically like a fan fiction, but with all the names and everything else different.
That is crazy, Dylan. Like,
My
how?
parents didn't even know. I said, like, after I joined the Navy, oh, yeah, and that novel I wrote back in middle school, and that my parents went, what? You wrote a novel?
Yeah, I remember I wrote a short story in middle school, not a novel. Uh, but wow, that's pretty amazing. How long did it take you to write that 400-page novel in middle school? Do you
I
remember?
think it took me about 3 or 4 weeks
Oh my
because I was pretty
goodness.
steady with it. So, all right, people struggle with things like, what is it, imposter syndrome and all that stuff. I had no clue that was a thing. I was just like, I read this really cool story. I want to write my
Mhm.
own version, and I just did it. I didn't
Yeah,
care one whit about what anybody thought.
yeah.
It was probably not any good, but I did it. I didn't revise
Right.
it. I never published it. In fact, even if I could find it in my parents' attic, the number two pencil lead is probably smudged into oblivion. You probably couldn't even read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that would be a treasure if you did have it. So, talking about genre, you talked about the cute covers and, nature things.
Yeah, it was fantasy.
So, is that the genre you write now? Um,
Nope. Well, I mean, a little bit. I mainly write science fiction, but I incorporate elements of fantasy into it.
okay. And so, what was the inspiration for that? Why do you write sci-fi?
Okay, good question. I was a nuclear operator in the Navy. I
My
ran.
husband was too.
Oh, really? So
Yes.
what flavor of nuke was he?
He was an ET in the
Oh,
Navy. Yes.
I was an EM. He would have called me a slacktrician or a wire biter. Yeah, that's so cool. I didn't know that about you. I'm gonna have
Yep.
to meet him
My
and
my son was also an ET nuke in the Navy for 9 years.
oh, so they should read my books because if they did, they would be able to tell it was written by a former Navy nuke.
Okay.
So much stuff. I mean, no state secrets or anything. Not that we really have a lot of secretive stuff in
Right.
there, but of course, I didn't put any confidential material, in these
Yeah.
books. It's all
Yes.
couched within its own universe, anyways.
Yes.
But to answer your question, all that time I spent, I mean, I loved science growing up, anyways, but going to nuclear power school and having to study it for 16 hours a day, some days, made me love it more, actually. Some people, they hear that and they clench up inside, right? 16 hours study days. And
Hmm.
while your college days, you should be out partying. No, I was partying there at my desk. Um,
Hmm.
but I fell in love with science. And then when I went back to writing again, I just thought, well, it's a no,
Yeah.
it's obvious. I love science and I love writing. I should do both. And I
Hmm.
always enjoy when I read science fiction from an author who it's obvious they really love science and they've poured years and years studying it, even
Hmm.
if they don't have a credential, letters behind the name.
Yeah. So my husband is not a big reader. He'd rather watch TV, and he loves sci-fi. So I'm definitely going to tell him about your books, and maybe I can get him to read something.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Okay.
you're married to an author, you got to read, right? All right, let's talk a little bit. You talked about when you were 13 in middle school, writing that book. What would you tell your younger writer self now?
Well, I would tell myself to jump in a time machine till the present day so that you actually have web communities where you can exchange critiques.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, of course I can't do that. But the idea remains that the most critical thing is getting those critiques.
Mm.
And in fact, like this stack of books here that I've published, these would
Mhm.
not exist if it weren't for a website called scribophile.com. I
Okay.
can email you the link to that site at some point, later that you can share with your viewers. I'm not an affiliate, I don't get money for for
Yeah.
promoting that. I just love the site so much. I've been on there for almost 6 years now.
Mhm.
I pay every year. It's the best money I ever spend because instead of paying thousands of dollars to an editor to edit my books, and that's how much it would cost because the word
Mhm.
count's pretty high.
Mhm.
It's like crowdsourcing it on this website, but
Hmm.
it's not for free where people just critique my stuff. I have to critique their stuff first. I earn karma points that I spend to post one chapter at a time on
Mhm.
the site. That's the way they do it. The other people do it too. And now some authors some writers, when I refer them to Scribophile, and it's not the only one. There's Critique Circle. There's other sites out there too. Um, but when I refer them to a site like this, they usually are taken aback and they're like, wait a minute, you're asking me to sink many hours of my desk time away from my own book to critique somebody else's book.
Mhm.
And they say, I don't have the time for that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't think you have the time to not do that. It's kind of like telling a Christian you don't have time not to pray. It's kind
Mhm.
of like that for the
Right.
writer. Here's why. when you just send your manuscript out to an editor that you're paying, lots of money to, and they just give you feedback, I mean, that's good. You are getting benefit, but you're not sharpening your own editorial eyeballs when
Mhm.
you just outsource that to somebody else. When you're critiquing other people's work, and I don't just mean a couple, I mean hundreds. Over the
Mhm.
span of 5 years on that site, I critiqued over 500 different chapters. And it tracks it on my profile. I've written over 500,000 words of critique against other people's novels in that
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
And what I've noticed is I've learned more about fixing my own issues from critiquing other people than I've even learned from them critiquing my stuff.
Yeah.
Now, it's valuable. Don't get me wrong. I do get a lot of benefit when people critique and point out stuff, but like if that never happened, if all I ever did was wrote critiques for others, that would still be worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a critique group too that I'm part of, not like that one paid professional group, but I know ACFW, the American Christian Fiction Writers, has the Scribes online critique group. I started with that, and you have to critique two or three people's entries to get a critique, kind of the same thought that you're talking about. And then I moved from that to now a critique group, and there's four of us in the group. We meet weekly and on Zoom, and we share, chapters with each other and for critique. And yeah, I can't imagine. We just met yesterday, and they went through one of my chapters, and it was like, I don't like this, and this is why. And I'm like, it makes a lot of sense. So good stuff to get critiques, and you got to have thick skin as a writer, right? You can't uh, be all upset and all of that when somebody says something. We have to be thankful. That's why we're there, right? We want the truth.
And it helps to separate your writing from your own identity. I don't view this as my baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this is not a part of my soul. If somebody attacks this, it's something I made. It's not who I am. And you
Mm-hmm.
really have to internalize that. Otherwise, you will feel assaulted.
That's a good point. That's a good way to look at that. So thinking about critique groups and starting, like what you would tell your younger self, what advice would you give today to somebody who may be watching this that's saying, I would love to write a book one day. I'd love to try this author thing. What advice would you give them?
So again, join a group like Scribophile, but two, don't just join. Get really busy critiquing other people's stuff. And now I get a lot of pushback on this. I hear, well, I don't know if I'm qualified to critique, or I don't know what to say, and what I tell every one of them is on that site, it makes it really easy. Go click into people's author profiles. They have a section at the bottom called critiques. You click that, it lists every critique that person has ever written.
Mm,
Well, for the chapters that haven't been pulled down, those get removed from the list. But click on those critiques and read. Just read everything, and find, especially if you can find somebody who's good, who's been on there for a long time, written a lot of critiques, go read their stuff. Here's the beauty: they're writing critiques about somebody else's work. You have no emotional skin in this at all. Like if that author is beating up that other author, oh, you're doing all these things, it doesn't hurt you. It's not your work. But you get the benefit of learning
hmm
what kind of comments people make. And don't just read one person's, read like many people's critiques about many different books.
hmm
And in the process, if you do that long enough, it's going to give you so many ideas about what confuses readers, what annoys them, and what bores them.
hmm
Right. And when you go back to your own reading, you'll have this big internal checklist of things you remembered reading in those critiques. And if you wrote critiques, you're really going to remember what bothered you. You go back to your own writing and go, oh my gosh, the thing that they were doing that I beat them up on, I'm doing it too. I better hurry up and fix that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And
It's
so
good.
that's what I would tell every new writer. Do not just, I mean, it's good to read craft books. Stephen King's On Writing and William Zinsser's On Writing Well. All those classics. Read them for sure. Take notes, but don't stop there, because if you just read the here's how you write, you're going to think in your head, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to build characters. I know how to avoid point of view, violations. And then you send your stuff to critiques and you're like, actually, I don't know. Apparently, I really didn't get it.
Yes, yes. I learned so much in the early days of writing through that critique group and just reading other people's stories, but also other people's critiques on those stories to see what stuck out to them. What did they see there, find there? It's like, oh, yeah, really good.
And
So,
then what I get people asking me next is, all right, Dylan, so I did what you said. I read critiques, I posted a bunch of critiques. I'm even getting lots of critiques. And, I'm not really sure the critiques I'm getting, they're kind of conflicting. One guy says I should do this to this chapter. Another
mhm,
guy says, no, 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 do this. And what I tell all these writers, because I know I go through it too, when you get critiques from other people, no matter who they are, you can't always trust what they're prescribing you to do to fix what they found. But you can almost always trust that if they put their finger on a part of your chapter and say, here, it hurts here.
mhm,
There's something wrong here. You can 90 something percent of the time trust that they're right. There is something wrong in that section of your book. They may be completely off about what it is and how to fix it. And it's okay. When a doctor palpates a patient, probing for, that's a sore spot. That's a genuine reaction. You can't really fake that, right?
mhm,
So I would trust when somebody says, oh, this is, but it's up to you as the author to learn how to discern what the real problem is and what the real fix is. And if you need help with that, try to find over time a little corral, if you will, of a handful of authors whose opinions you trust and float the question by them. That's what I do. I send an email whenever I get contentious, you know,
mhm,
critiques. I'll send them to Philip Nelson. He's my main editor, so to speak. I'll go, hey, I'm hearing this. What do you think? And get a
mhm,
tiebreaker.
yeah.
That can help a lot. And then the other thing I hear is, well, I've done all that and I think it's pretty good now. Is it really ready to release? How do I know that I published this? And my answer, if you're going to self publish, actually, whether you're going to self publish or traditional, what I do is I look at these critiques as more and more new people start critiquing. Because you're going to get older people who've been, critiquing your stuff for a long time. They've kind of lost objectivity on your work at some point. So then on Scribophile, it's easy to get new people who've never seen your chapters before. If they read those chapters and they say, oh my gosh, I cannot find anything to comment on. In fact, this is so good. Where can I buy this?
Mhm,
If they're asking the question, where can I buy this? My wallet is flopping open, Dylan. Then that's the indicator that this book is pretty much ready.
mhm.
It's, at that point, I send it off to beta readers and I start listening to the book read out loud to me through text to speech to catch those typos that
Mhm.
you'll never catch by looking with your eyeballs. I do
Right.
those kinds of things before I push it
Mhm.
out to
So, one thing for people watching this who are not writers or authors or don't care to be, but they are avid readers and they want to devour good stories, for them to see a little behind the scenes here of what authors do go through and put into these books for them to enjoy. Something I didn't realize when I started this back in 2018 and said, I think I'm going to write a novel and try to get published. I had no idea about all the marketing and the social media, platform building, and all the things. So, there's a lot more that goes into this than just writing the words on the page to put a book out there. So, how do you go about getting your stories into the hands of readers? Do you enjoy the marketing aspect and being on social media? How do you handle that?
social media is okay. I use that for finding other authors, to be honest with you. I don't really count on social media to sell my books to actual readers. What I do is I carry my sales kit everywhere I go. Ask my wife and daughter, they will tell you. When I go to our my daughter's debate tournament in 3 days, everywhere I go around the campus, I will be carrying this and wearing the matching t-shirt. Yes, I have a t-shirt designed for every one of my book covers. And I also carry, if I'm in full battle dress, I will carry my mobile bookstore. I have like 2 or 3 copies of every single book that I sell in this bag. So that
Uh-huh.
goes on my back. I'm wearing the shirt. I'm carrying the kit. And I
Yeah.
should show you very briefly what's in this kit. Okay. I've got a stack of bookmarks to hand out. I've got a card swiper for Square, although I do tap more these days. I have a blue signing pin, so I'm ready to sign a book. I keep my fancy spreadsheet of sales that I've made.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, I keep an envelope of $5 bills and $1 bills so I can make change for people if they want to buy my books with cash. So I
Awesome.
carry that everywhere I go.
Yeah, I love those tips.
So I'm always, that's the key, always ready to make a sale. I have sold books on a flight at 30,000 feet because they happen to have cash and I had my books
Yeah.
on.
Yeah,
If I
that's
didn't
awesome.
have this on hand, no sale.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm gonna have to remember that when my book comes out next year. My first book. I'm like, okay, who can I sell to?
And so
Right.
that's one thing. I do that guerrilla approach, but I also go to a local sales event every single Saturday. So I
Every
literally do
Saturday.
52 sales events a year. That is how, over the last 3.5 years, I have sold over 3,500 copies of my books.
Mm,
Only about 500 of those sales in that time were done on Amazon. The other 3,000 were at farmers markets, comic conventions, at speech and debate tournaments, things
mm-hmm.
like art shows. And one thing that's helped me the most is just having a local farmers market that happens every Saturday. And what I did, I went there, I was on the waiting list for many months, and eventually the organizer saw that I was so determined to always be there. They offered me a chance to be a a permanent vendor. So I have an assigned spot right next to Jimmy John's in downtown Portsmouth, Virginia. So you can always find me next to the Jimmy John's Saturday mornings. So I have a place to go every weekend to sell my books.
Wow.
You know, I go to other places on some Saturdays and I just tell the organizer, hey, I'm going to this other market this weekend. As long as I'm at her market like 2 or 3 times a month, that's all great. But having that regular place means that you have to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Your writing business is an actual business.
Mm. Wow. That's commitment right there. That's
It
commitment.
is, right? Because I have to pack my car with all that stuff the night before. I get up at like 6:30 in the morning to get out there to set up my tent in time for the customers to come. And then I'm there for 5 or 6 hours. I break everything down, I drive home, and then I unpack all my stuff from the car, and then
Mm-hmm.
I go and type up all my sales from that event into a spreadsheet. And if there's emails that I collected for my newsletter there, I'll go and plug that into MailerLite so that those people are actually on my newsletter. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that
Mm-hmm.
goes into this. But I love the sales and marketing so much. I was scared away from self-publishing for a while because people said things like, oh, if you do that, you're going to have to do sales and marketing for yourself. You don't have a publisher doing it for you. I didn't know how fun it was going to be until I started it. And now I'm like, I get to do the
Mm-hmm.
sales.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, our time is up, but I want to just end on the last question here, just to wrap this up in a minute or so. So your series is Scribes Descent.
Well,
Is
the
that
series is called Scribe Series, but book
Scribes?
one is called Scribe's Descent.
Okay. So what type of reader are you trying to reach through this book and through this series? If you said this is the perfect reader that is going to love this, who is that?
Great. All right. So it would be somebody who wants very heavy science fiction, like very deep technical science, but without all the adult content.
Okay.
right? If you go to Jurassic Park or Martian, yeah, you're going to get good science, but you're also going to get vulgarity and some other stuff that, you as a Christian, you may not want for yourself as an adult, but you definitely don't want it for your kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I guess the real meaty target of the audience would be parents who want hard hitting sci fi for their young teens to later teens that doesn't have all that other stuff in it, the graphic stuff. They really want my books because it's hard to find this. If you
Mm-hmm.
find sci-fi that's clean and appropriate for that age group, it's usually going to be dumbed down. If you have a very smart kid, they're going to get bored,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you want something that's very intelligent, I was a nuclear operator, right? I poured a lot of that expertise into these books to make the science very detailed and realistic.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get bored reading this on that score.
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking that my 18-year-old granddaughter might really enjoy your series. She's really into science and she loves like space stuff and just things like that. So I think she might be interested.
And I made this as a video game, which you can play the demo of on my website.
Okay.
And I have a deal. If you review any of my books on Amazon, I will put your name in my game as a collectible item.
Very
It's
cool.
my superpower. There's no other books that will get your name in a video game.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Well, gosh, we could keep on going. Like, because I was thinking, okay, I don't read sci-fi. I'm not a big sci-fi fan. What are we going to talk about in this interview? But man, I feel like we could keep going and not run out of things to talk about. So thank you for sharing with the viewers today. And I know a lot of my subscribers are old ladies like me. And so,
Hey, a lot of my readers, believe it or not, are women between the ages of 30 and 50. My
okay.
oldest reader of this book is 83.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Got dementia, so she cannot read the rest of my series, unfortunately. I never realized that might be a problem,
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah.
me as but
But I was to say, even if somebody out there, you don't think this is for you, you have people in your life that I'm sure you're thinking of right now that, oh, my son, my grandson, my niece, my husband, somebody that would love to get their hands on this. So hopefully we're going to spread the love and pass it on. All right. Well, thanks, Dylan, for spending your time with me today on this interview. And I really wish you the best in your writing endeavors.
thanks, and I hope something that I said gives your viewers some hope because there really is very strong hope for you as an author and for you as a reader.
All right. Thank you.